When we talk about a subject of a sentence, we're really asking who or what the sentence is about. It's normally one of the very first words in the sentence, though it might not be the actual first word, especially if there's a time phrase. So for example, in English, if we look at the sentence, Bob is doing his homework, the subject of that sentence is Bob, because he's the one doing the homework. This would still be true if we had a sentence such as, tonight Bob is doing his homework. The subject would still be Bob because he's still the one doing the homework. We can also use subject pronouns, which are short words that often replace names to avoid repetition. This is especially important when you're talking about one person doing more than one thing. We don't want to have to constantly use a name. Bob went to school. Bob came home. Bob did his homework. Bob went to basketball practice. Bob played a video game. Bob went to bed. It's really obnoxious to hear Bob that many times. So we're going to replace his name with the subject pronoun he. Bob went to school. He is doing his homework. There are 9 subject pronouns in French, which are organized in a chart by person, so which person are you talking about, and number, so how many people are we talking about. Each person is a row. So first person is when we are talking about yourself. Second person is when you are talking directly to a second person. And third person is when you're discussing a third person who's not a part of the conversation. How many people we're talking about is each column. We have a singular and a plural column. So our first column is if you're talking about one person, and our second column is if you're talking about more than one person. In English, here's what we get. First person singular is I. I'm talking about myself and no one else. But first person plural is we. I'm talking about myself and a group. Second person in English, regardless of if it's singular or plural, is you. If you're talking directly to someone, even if there's more than one person, we still say you. And third person kind of gets a little bit tricky. We split third person singular up by gender. We can talk about he or we can talk about she. But if we're talking about a group in third person, we always use they. If we add in the French translations, we see that they have 2 subject pronouns that we do not in English. However, you've already seen 4 of these. You've already learned je, tu, il, and elle. I, you, he, and she. In that il, elle column, or box, we're going to add the one on, meaning one. The plural column is all new to you. So for we, we're going to say nous. Second person plural you becomes vous. And third person plural, we have 2 different words for they. We have il and elle. So let's start there. They is also split into 2 groups. Just like third person singular where we split into he and she based on gender, French does the exact same thing in they. Il is for a group of guys, and elle is for a group of girls. It's fairly simple since il, he, add an s, becomes a group of guys. Elle, she, add an s, it becomes a group of girls. A mixed group with both guys and girls will always default to il. We also have the pronoun one. It used to be used in English all the time, but now we typically use it as a very broad general you. So this is when you're talking about you, but you're not really talking about a specific person. Okay, so if we say things like, oh, to do well in school, you should listen to the teacher. We really mean everyone should listen to the teacher, but we use the word you. In French, we're going to say one should listen to the teacher, and we're going to use the pronoun on. Tu and vous both become you in English. So we've already talked about formal versus informal. So tu is informal and vous is formal. But notice where they are in the chart. They also have singular and plural aspects. Use tu when you're talking to one person, and vous when you're talking to a group. The question then becomes, what happens when these mix up? So you're speaking formally but to only one person. The trick is that vous can be plural or formal. So you're either speaking to a group, or you're speaking formally, or you're speaking formally to a group. Tu is singular and informal. It must be both.